Most isekai give their protagonist a reason to fight pretty quickly. A demon lord, a prophecy, someone to protect. Release That Witch gives Roland a crumbling town, an ability that despises him, and people who have no reason to trust him yet. Then it just watches what he does with that patiently and carefully. That patience is exactly why this show was worth talking about. Just a quick note before we get into it, some of the characters and events are referenced in this video are drawn from the web novel series and manhwa, not just the anime adaptation. The anime only covers the opening arc, so where the story goes deeper, I've pulled from the source material to give a fuller picture. No major spoilers, but worth knowing. Today we're getting into Release That Witch, the donghua that came to Crunchyroll earlier this year, and specifically what makes it more interesting than its isekai premise suggests. Because yes, it has the genre staples: reincarnated protagonist, magic, fantasy world. But underneath that is telling a genuinely thoughtful story about power and who holds it, how it's maintained, and what it actually does to push against it. That's what I want to dig in today. Roland Wimbledon is the fourth prince of Grey Castle, and if that sounds unimpressive, that's entirely the point. When the king announces a succession contest, Roland doesn't get sent somewhere strategically valuable. He gets Border Town, a cold, remote, sitting on the edge of where demon beasts emerge every winter. It's not really a posting, it's a dismissal dressed up as one. What no one knows is that the person now in Roland's body isn't Roland. He's Cheng Yan, an engineer from our world, and he's looking at this neglected town and seeing something the original Roland never would have, and that's potential. What I appreciate is that the show doesn't rush this. It lets us watch Roland observe, ask questions, and figure out what's broken and why. He arrives with nothing, no allies, no trust, no leverage, and the story is pretty patient to make that feel real. To understand why Roland's situation is so precarious, you need to understand the structure he's operating inside. At the top, the king. But his authority depends on the loyalty of the people beneath him, and that loyalty has conditions. Below that is the church, whose power isn't primarily military, it's ideological. It shapes what people believe is natural, what they fear, and what counts as legitimate. That's actually harder to fight than an army. Then the high nobility, lords who control land and wealth that's been building for generations. They've outlasted difficult rulers before. A fourth prince in Border Town isn't something they're worried about. And at the bottom, the commoners, doing most of the actual work and treated by the political logic of this world as a resource rather than as people with interests worth considering. Roland looks at this and understands something in the system isn't built to let you see. Commoners aren't powerless because they're weak. They're powerless because the structure has been designed to keep them that way. That's a different problem entirely, and it points towards a different solution. Roland wants to improve Border Town, better conditions, better pay, real defenses for the winter. None of that sounds radical on its own. The problem is that improving life for the people at the bottom always means reducing the leverage of people at the top. The nobles of Longsong Stronghold have been the real power in the western region for a long time, and this arrangement works for them. A stronger Border Town under Roland's direction is a direct threat to their influence, even if he never frames it that way. So he can't be open about what he's doing. He has to build carefully, quietly, and fast enough for that when the pushback comes, and it will come, he's in a position to survive it. That's the tension the show holds across its early episodes. Not whether Roland will win a fight, but whether he can build something real before the fight becomes unavoidable. It's a slower kind of suspense that you usually get in this genre, but it's more honest for it. The witches are where the show becomes more openly political, and it deserves some attention. Women born with magical abilities are labeled demonic by the church, dangerous to be executed or controlled. The fear around them isn't organic. It was built and it's maintained deliberately. Roland can see this from the outside in a way people raised inside the belief system mostly can't. The church doesn't persecute witches because they're genuinely uncontrollable. It persecutes them because they represent ability the church can't own. A community empowered by a witch becomes less dependent on the institution, and less dependent means less controllable. When Roland chooses to protect Anna and Nana rather than follow the expected response, it's not just a compassionate moment. He's choosing to judge people by who they are rather than the category assigned to them. In this world, that's quietly radical, and the show doesn't let him do it without consequences. What makes Roland's position genuinely compelling is that he never just deals with one problem. His brother Timothy keeps sending recall orders wrapped in the language of duty, but the meaning is clear. Come back where you can be managed. Timothy isn't threatened yet, but he's paying attention, and what he's seeing in Border Town is starting to unsettle him. The Longsong nobles move from passive hostility to open aggression. As Roland reforms realms become visible, and it's worth noting they don't see themselves as the aggressors. From their perspective, they're defending something that worked. The show gives them that internal logic rather than making them simply villainous, which I think is the right call. And behind everything, the church remains a constant pressure. Given the witches Roland is sheltering, none of these pressures resolve cleanly. The show holds them in tension for a long time, which feels true. Real situations like this rarely let you finish one problem before the next one arrives. The defensive battle of Bordertown is where everything the show has been building comes together. Osmond Ryan's alliance arrives expecting to overwhelm a weak, underprepared prince. They see Roland's formation and find it almost beneath comment. In their reading of the situation, this isn't a contest. What they haven't encountered for is everything Roland has quietly been building over the months. Weapons they've never encountered, soldiers fighting out genuine loyalty, a plan designed by someone who understood how they'd approach this. The show has shown us enough of the preparation that we knew something was coming. What it feels like is a consequence, the direct result of choices Roland made before the armies met. That's what makes it land the way it does. At the production, release that which is genuinely solid. The animation is clean and mature, the world feels lived in, and the writing respects your intelligence. Roland wins through planning. The people around him are competent and have their own agency. That's rarer in this genre than it should be. The honest caveat is that season 1 only covers the opening arc of a very long source novel. You're watching a foundation being laid, not a story reaching its conclusion. If you need resolution, keep that in mind. But if you're willing to invest in something being built carefully, this is one of the more rewarding things currently airing. At its core, this is a story about what change actually requires. Not strength, not a power spike, but patience and careful thinking, and also the willingness to build trust in a world that has every reason to resist it. For me, that's the hardest story to tell, and this show earns it. So that's the end of this analysis, and I would love to know what you guys actually think of it. So until next time, I'll see you later.